The president said she should be in jail. Jasmine Crockett picked up a highlighter, went live, and by the next morning, half the country had her back. This is it, others believed. She's done for. The room was thick with tension as President Trump walked to the microphone, his countenance strained, voice curt. He was already angry, and something in the atmosphere suggested that this press conference was anything but standard. He fidgeted with the papers on the podium, omitted the introductory remarks, and dove right into the heart of the matter. Without naming her at first, he started discussing a militant congressman who, in his own words, had openly encouraged rebellion and was lying about his executive order to manipulate the voting system for minorities. And then he blurted it out, slowly and loudly. Jasmine Crockett must be investigated for sedition. Frankly, she should be jailed. A silence fell over the room, as if a door had slammed shut on the discussion. Reporters blinked in shock. Some looked at one another in confusion, while others started typing furiously. The President of the United States had just threatened publicly to send a sitting Congresswoman to jail for expressing herself. One journalist went so far as to say, "Mr. President, are you saying you'll tell the DOJ too?" Trump interrupted her. "We're investigating. She's dangerous. She's causing strife at a moment when we need to be unified. People like that can't just say what they want and expect there won't be repercussions." The atmosphere was charged. But it wasn't only in the room. It quickly spread like fire. Clips of the president's threat were being shared on social media within minutes. TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, you name them. But in her Dallas district office, Jasmine Crockett wasn't responding the way everyone had anticipated. She was standing behind her desk with her arms folded and her eyes fixed on the screen. "Play it again," she instructed calmly. The clip played once more, and her facial expression didn't alter. She didn't pace back and forth. She didn't rage. But something within her changed. This wasn't about politics anymore. This was personal. "We have to react," her press man whispered. "Immediately." Jasmine nodded. "We will." But not in the way they anticipate. The game was afoot. The media went crazy. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, they all were holding on for a statement. The president had taken it to the public, and now the whole world wanted to hear what Crockett would say next. Her name was everywhere. Over 200 news pieces, talk radio shows, political Twitter, it never stopped. But Jasmine was not going to play according to their terms. She addressed her team. "We go live tomorrow. No filter. Just me. Let them listen to me straight." She dialed her mother's phone number and spoke. "Mama, did you see it?" Her mother's voice shook. "Yes, I did. Are you all right?" "I am," Jasmine said. "But this just got bigger than me." The following day, Jasmine Crockett streamed live. No presser, no glamorous filters. She alone, at a simple desk, phone slanted up slightly. "Good morning," she started. "I want to address directly the people who voted for me and anyone else who is wondering why the president just threatened me on live television." Initially, her channel had fewer than 1,000 viewers. In a matter of minutes, it grew to 10,000, then to 500,000. "I'm not afraid," she asserted, her voice firm, "but I am furious, and you should be too." She leaned in a bit. "The president told me to go to prison for inciting civil disobedience. I'll show you exactly what I did." Jasmine walked her through it, reading from the executive order while holding up the document and pointing to individual words with a highlighter. "This," she tapped a particular clause, "grants the government the right to close a polling place in any black or brown neighborhood if a person puts out a false tweet that a brawl is happening at the polling place." Silence filled the room. And then she continued, "I want you to see this." She opened her email account, shared her screen, and demonstrated the 2 leaked internal emails from a whistleblower within the Department of Justice. One instructed staff to facilitate compliance with the president's agenda, and the other named Jasmine Crockett by name, labeling her as a rising threat to administrative unity. "This isn't oversight. It's suppression," Jasmine declared, her voice as calm as ever. This isn't about unity. It's about control. She wasn't yelling. Her voice was controlled, measured, like someone who knew exactly what she was doing. "We're standing at the edge of something dangerous," she said, looking straight into the camera. "And I'm not backing down. I've faced worse than a man yelling on TV." As she cut off the live stream, she knew the fight was just starting. The responses began pouring in. "My grandmother had been prevented from voting in 1962. I never thought I'd ever see this again. I'm standing with you. Thanks for reading that aloud. I'm a mom of 2, and I had no idea that clause was there. I'm passing this along to all the people I know." Jasmine leaned back in her chair, taking a breath. Her aide glanced at her. That was different. Jasmine slowly turned toward her. "Now, let's see who has the guts to talk next." And it wasn't just the citizens who were responding. Within the White House, one had been observing closely, and they weren't pleased. The wave of support for Jasmine Crockett was only just starting. It spread quietly but firmly, like the circles when a stone is cast into water, until the entire shop was participating. 1,000 miles away, in Santa Fe, New Mexico, retired teacher Gloria sat at her kitchen table and sent the clip to her former pupils. She accompanied it with a brief note, "History's knocking. Pay attention." Within an hour, 20 replies flooded her inbox, each with a screenshot showing that her former students had shared it too. "We're all in this together," one of them wrote. On social media, the hashtag #HStandWithJasmine jumped over celebrity news and sports results within 4 hours. But it wasn't the filtered influencers who drove it. It was teachers, supermarket clerks, nursing assistants, high school seniors, people who don't typically weigh in on politics. But this time, they did. "My father marched in Birmingham. I see the same playbook," read one post. "Voting shouldn't be a gamble," posted another. Even those who didn't care for politics couldn't remain silent. "I don't even like politics," one message said, "but threatening a rep for speaking? Nah." Classic sources rushed to keep up. MSNBC repeated the live stream clips in between weather forecasts. CNN had a producer in Dallas by lunchtime. Even a radio talk show in Helena, Montana, more famous for cattle prices than Congress, began with a segment called The Crockett Clash. By the late afternoon, Lansing streets were beginning to fill. Close to 200 individuals had mobilized outside the State House, carrying hand-painted signs that said, "Dissent is not a crime," and "Protect the polls." There weren't any party flags, no megaphones, only voices chanting in a deliberate rhythm. A local reporter counted 8 ministers, 3 Vietnam veterans, and a handful of high school track athletes still in practice gear. The protests were quiet but powerful. In Tallahassee, Florida, a law student named Kareem planned a candlelight march around the old Capitol building. He hoped for perhaps 30 friends and classmates. Instead, almost 600 appeared. They marched slowly, their candles casting shadows against the limestone columns. When a police cruiser pulled up nearby, nobody dispersed. They marched on, shoulders set, candles high. Jasmine played video from her office, phone balanced against a water bottle. Her director of communications, Patrice, leaned over her shoulder. "They're everywhere," Patrice breathed. "Everywhere." Jasmine smiled, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let them see each other." And they did. Live streams from Eugene, Oregon revealed homemade banners dancing in the wind. A drone shot from Shreveport, Louisiana caught a serene ribbon of people winding through downtown, singing "This Little Light of Mine." In Bismarck, North Dakota, where protests don't usually top 100, locals lined up in a quiet circle outside the courthouse and read passages from the Voting Rights Act aloud, one person at a time. Cable talk show hosts had argued whether what was unfolding was civil unrest or civil defense. A national morning show analyst cautioned that the crowds could get raucous. But social media videos told a different story. Kids with strollers, retirees with canes, college marching bands playing brass favorites. The tone was more akin to a group of people taking a collective deep breath than a riot. But tension still lurked beneath the surface. In Madison, Wisconsin, one counter-demonstrator had waved a "Lock her up" sign. A red ball cap wearing veteran yelled at a teenager streaming on his phone as fake outrage protests. Police quickly separated them, but the clip accumulated 2 million views in hours, fueling cable pundits who are ever hungry for confrontation. Meanwhile, back in Dallas, Jasmine wrote a thank you note but stopped midway. She instead tweeted, "Keep it peaceful. Keep it loud. I see you, and I'm not backing down." The tweet received 200,000 likes within 30 minutes. Phones within the West Wing rang incessantly. A communications staffer attempted to play down the trend, describing the protests as small groups. But the spin didn't stick. Aides were fielding calls from red and blue governors inquiring if federal observers would be sent to cities on the executive order list. The fact that they were asking was a sign of trouble. If the observers arrived, it would make Jasmine's argument. If they did not arrive, the order would be rendered ineffective. In a diner in Rapid City, South Dakota, truck driver Dean observed a news banner unfold on a mounted television. White House reviews response after nationwide Crockett rallies. He put down his fork and grumbled, "That's a first." Late on that night, civil rights lawyer Wilhelmina Banks took a local Memphis station and explained the legal risks. "Intimidation only succeeds if you silence the target," she stated. Congresswoman Crockett responded with sunlight. By morning, petitions calling for the suspension of the executive order had reached 3 million signatures. The figures alone surprised pollsters. Jasmine scrolled through the registration list until her vision went blurry. Clerks from Utah, nurses from Iowa, a Peoria librarian, folks far outside the protest map. Patrice came into her office carrying a folder full of interview requests. "They all want you. Today, tomorrow, yesterday if you can manage it," she told Jasmine. Jasmine put the phone down on the desk and massaged her temples. "Pick two. One local, one national. If we talk everywhere, we speak nowhere." In the White House, worry was rapidly becoming panic. Advisors scrambled to rein in a fire they never anticipated. 5 aides were in silent standoff by the time President Trump entered the Oval Office the following morning. Phones rang on every available surface. One of the flat screens along the wall was stuck on a protest chat from St. Louis, Missouri. Grandmas with signs, teenagers handing out bottles of water, a little boy with a hand-painted sign that said, "Let her speak." Trump waved at the screen. "Turn that off." But nobody did anything. He fiddled with his tie and sat down. And then pointed at his chief strategist, Bennett Gorski, who was sweating his dress shirt even though the air conditioning was on. "Why the hell is this still news?" Bennett swallowed. "We figured there would be some commotion, Mr. President, but the Crockett video, it went viral. We misjudged her." Trump laughed. "It's just another Democrat screaming about racism. That's their entire brand." "She didn't scream," replied Karen Stroud, Deputy Communications Director. "That's the worst part. She presented everything in a level-headed manner. Read the order on air. Held up DOJ emails. She sounded rational." Trump leaned back in his chair, narrowing his eyes. "So strike back harder." There was a long pause. Finally, the Attorney General's liaison, a thin man named Rusk, spoke. "That might backfire again, Mr. President. The DOJ is already catching heat. There's chatter about launching an internal review of how the executive order was handled. Someone's leaking from inside." Trump's hand slapped the desk. "Find the leak." Bennett said quickly, "We're working on it." Later, at the Rapid City diner, a truck driver named Dean sat and watched a news bulletin. White House reviews response after nationwide Crockett rallies. This was only the start. Jasmine had only lit the match, and now the flames were raging throughout the country. "I would not have gone live. I would not be here tonight," he inquired. That question lingered, and Jasmine Crockett's answer was measured. I want three things, she stated, taking a moment to ensure that everyone was paying attention. I want the executive order suspended. I want a bipartisan examination of federal election monitoring. And I want to make people understand that silence does not save anyone. It only creates room for more intense threats. Jonah put his notes away. That was strange. Jasmine's response was not political. It was a challenge. We contacted the White House, Jonah reported. No comment. Jasmine smiled, but just barely. Of course, she said. Following the commercial break, producers showed a 3-minute community reel, footage of protests all over the nation, but the true power was not in the images. It was in the voices. A Fresno teacher said, "My kids saw her live stream in homeroom." That's civics. A Maine postal worker said, "I'm white, 65, and I'm telling you, this isn't just about her." And a woman from Jackson, Mississippi said, "I voted beside my mama in '94. We never missed an election. If they move my polling station, I'll walk 2 hours to get there." At the conclusion of the broadcast, producers for Jonah Frank indicated a record second highest level of viewer participation in the show's history. Only the 9/11 episode had ever been higher. But television ratings weren't the only statistics that night. Senator Maxine Well, an Arizona moderate conservative, posted on Twitter, "I don't agree with Representative Crockett on many things, but locking up dissent is not who we are. I won't vote for this executive order." It was the first fissure in the Republican bloc. Not a deluge, but significant enough to make waves. The following morning, Jasmine's inbox was full, not of press requests, but of stories. Handwritten letters scanned into PDFs, snapshots of frayed voter ID cards from the 60s, messages from individuals who had never raised their voices before. Patrice stood in Jasmine's office with a stack of papers clipped together with binder clips. "These are all from last night," she said. Jasmine picked up the first one and read it quietly. After 1 minute, she folded it and put it on the desk. "They're not writing to me," she whispered. "They're writing to the next person who's going to need this moment." But not everyone was stirred. Some perceived a chance to retaliate with greater force. The smear campaign started quietly enough, like a whisper carried through walls. But by evening, it had fully flowered. A headline appeared on a fringe political site, "Crockett funded by dark money PACs tied to extremists." The story had no named sources, no citations, just recycled screenshots from old campaign donations that were legal, public, and already reported on years ago. But it didn't matter. The goal wasn't truth, it was volume. The headline spread like static through the internet. Soon, right-wing commentators were quoting the article as fact. A podcast interviewer in Austin labeled her a professional agitator. A Nashville cable commentator called her a staged actor in an even larger play. On social media, her words were cropped and taken out of context. One went viral, pairing her interview with out-of-context video from a street protest she didn't even attend. Within her Dallas office, Jasmine scrolled through it all silently. "Should we react?" Patrice asked, sitting by her desk with her arms crossed. Jasmine nodded her head. "Not yet. Let them drain the tank." A few of the assaults were not online. Someone spray-painted "traitor" on a billboard in her district that had her face on it. In Raleigh, North Carolina, a right-wing radio station devoted an entire segment to arguing her law license needed to be scrutinized. An Alabama sheriff posted on Facebook that she ought to be investigated for threatening democracy. And then there were the messages, "Go back to law school. You're not MLK. You're a fraud. We know where your office is." The final one prompted a call to Capitol Police. Security measures were reconfigured, and her staff started going in rotating shifts at night. Jasmine's building stayed lit on purpose. No guessing, no shadows. But in the midst of it all, she just did not flinch. She answered emails. She read through draft legislation. She met with organizers. And she kept appearing in front of the camera, not to clap back, not to argue, but to speak. In one short clip posted on her official X account, she stared straight at the lens and said, "If I'm being attacked for reading the law, What does that say about the law? And what does it say about the people attacking me? That clip gained 4 million views in under a day. Regardless, the war of words continued. Right-wing commentators pounced on each new story, her speaking engagements, her previous court cases, even her wardrobe. One of the viral posts magnified her earrings during the interview with State Line Weekly and accused her of using them as symbols of extremist philosophy. They weren't. They were from a black-owned boutique in Baton Rouge. Jasmine laughed when Patrice pulled out that one. "They're $18 hoops," she said. "The only thing extreme about them is the markup." But beneath the joke was exhaustion. "You're standing stronger than I thought you would," Patrice conceded one day as she delivered Jasmine a thermos of soup. "I'm not doing it for comfort," Jasmine shot back. "I'm doing it for clarity." The truth doesn't fatigue. That night, there came an unexpected letter, written in cursive on yellowed stationery. It was from Geneva Bryant, a 93-year-old woman from Savannah, Georgia. "When I was 22, I attempted to register to vote, and they informed me that I couldn't read. I had memorized Article 1 of the Constitution. I stood up and recited it word for word. They still rejected me. Don't stop, Jasmine. I see you." Jasmine carried that letter in her purse after that day. She carried it everywhere. The tide started to turn again. Steadily, a Milwaukee nonprofit posted a line-by-line breakdown of the disinformation being disseminated online. A group of fact-checkers published a collaborative report refuting 5 of the most popular stories aimed at Jasmine. Civil rights lawyers started appearing on cable TV defending her reputation, but the turning point that really came was from an unexpected source. Senator Charles Brantley from South Dakota, staunchly conservative, a veteran lawmaker known for his strict party loyalty, appeared on a midday broadcast and surprised everyone. "I may disagree with Congresswoman Crockett on many issues," he said, "but calling for her arrest because she read a federal order out loud, that's not how democracy works. If we start jailing dissent, we don't deserve the flag we salute." That video repeated on a continuous loop for the following 6 hours. Within the White House, aides fell mute. Within Jasmine's office, Patrice let out a breath. "Well, at least. That's one more than I anticipated." What no one anticipated, however, was the change that would follow. A Republican defector was merely the initial fissure within a dam that was ready to burst. One on cybercrime, the other on a shuffling of staff, but the internet doesn't rest. At 12 a.m., a Tulane law professor posted the link in 3 words. "This changes everything." The memo was brief, shortly 6 paragraphs. But hidden in the second paragraph was a sentence nobody wanted to read in print. "We recognize procedural failures and internal handling of communications around the executive order on federal election protocols and will be conducting a formal inquiry into administrative messaging and interdepartmental pressure around Representative Jasmine Crockett." By morning, it was on the front page. DOJ acknowledges pressure. Validates review tied to Crockett controversy. The Boston Sentinel White House bluff backfires as DOJ acknowledges error. The Sacramento Daily Crockett vindicated an internal DOJ review. Detroit Metro Journal, the legal ramifications were still unclear. The DOJ hadn't called the order illegal, but it left the door open enough to validate what Jasmine had been insisting all along. Something had gone wrong in the machine inside, and an attempt had been made to hide it. At 8:04 a.m., Jasmine broadcast live again. This time, she wore a gentle green blouse, no makeup, just her voice. She didn't glory. She didn't attribute fault. She sat quietly, stared directly into the camera, and said, "You saw it with your own eyes." The truth wasn't loud, but it was steady. She produced the original papers she had presented days ago. This is the same order. Same memo. Same evidence. None of that has changed. What has changed is that enough of you listened. She hesitated. Her tone became more resolute. "We are not puppets of power, not props in someone's scheme. We are citizens, and the Constitution wasn't written to hang on the wall. It was written for moments precisely like this. Then she remained silent for 5 entire seconds. The silence was more powerful than any words. Around the nation, screens flickered with response. Civics classes played the clip. Ministers used her words in Sunday sermons. A Des Moines high school group reenacted her speech for a local youth film festival. Cable programs struggled to shift. Even the Frontline Ledger, a right-wing magazine renowned for acidic editorials, printed an article called "When the Government Blinks: Jasmine Crockett and the Power of Relentless Clarity." Within the White House, anger bubbled into pandemonium. Gorski paced with his phone stuck to his ear, shouting at a comms assistant, "Damage control now. We talk about moving on. Pivot to the economy, border issues, anything but Crockett." Press Secretary Reynolds jotted out draft releases as the president seethed in silence. No one dared mention the Well resolution, which had been introduced by Senator Well, because momentum was building. 5 additional legislators signed on during lunchtime, 2 of whom were swing state senators the administration couldn't afford to lose. Worse, internal DOJ whistleblowers had started talking to independent watchdog groups. A formal congressional oversight hearing was already scheduled for next week. And Jasmine? She was gaining strength. Later that day, she held a town hall meeting in Dallas. No fanfare at all, just folding chairs, bottled water, and neighborhood volunteers operating the mic. A guy stood up, middle 60s, construction boots, face creased from years of sun. "I ain't voted in 15 years, he said. "Thought nothing I do would matter. But you made me feel like maybe it does." Jasmine looked at him gently. "It does," she said. "It always has. They just made it easy to forget." An 11-year-old girl stood next to him, her voice shaking. "My dad said we're going to go vote together next time. It's going to be my first time watching." "I'm excited." Jasmine knelt beside her, smiling. "That's your right. Protect it with everything you've got." The following morning, the Senate resolution to freeze the executive order finally landed on the Senate floor. It was supposed to fail, but it did. It passed 51 to 49. The chamber grew silent as the vote was read. Senator Rell rose, nodded once, and left. Reporters pursued her for a quote. She gave only 5 words. "Constitutional silence is still speech." Outside the Capitol, a handful of people waited behind barriers in the cold, listening on their phones. When the results were announced, someone let out a yell. Others applauded. A man shot his fist in the air, not in rage, but in relief. And far away, in a kitchen in Columbus, Ohio, a woman sat with 2 sons at the table. Phones turned off. Breakfast gone cold in front of them. "Know who Crockett is?" she asked them. "Yeah," replied the younger one. "She's the one who said no to the president." She smiled. "She's the one who showed everybody how." But Jasmine wasn't done yet. Her next step would prove that she wasn't merely opposing power. She was willing to redefine it. The note was brief. "Would you like to author a bipartisan blueprint for election reform?" It was from Senator Maxine Waters' office, fewer than 48 hours after the Senate had halted President Trump's executive order. Jasmine read it once before bringing Patrice to her office. "They're not playing games," she said, tapping her screen. "This is no show." Patrice cocked an eyebrow. "And if it is?" "Let them discover," said Jasmine. "I can write law better than they can." They arrived in Washington the following day. Behind closed doors, within a conference room on the 3rd floor of the Dirksen Senate office building, Jasmine sat down with Rell and 2 other senators, a Democrat from Oregon, a Republican from Pennsylvania. There was no press, no handlers, just policy notes, water pitchers, and 4 legal minds working a whiteboard until it looked like calculus. Jasmine listened more than she spoke, but when she did speak, she didn't hedge. "We're not here to tweak the margins," she said. "If we're going to fix something, it needs to be worth fixing." They began small, national early voting requirements, more consistent federal rules for poll book relocations, openness about redistricting plans. It wasn't showy. It wouldn't make the night news. But there was potential. The draft took 2 weeks. The Voter Integrity and Accessibility Framework, a 36-page report describing bipartisan reforms intended to bring future executive orders on elections to be subject to congressional review. Fireworks were what the media anticipated. They received focus instead. Jasmine did not hold a rally. She did not send a victory tweet. She spoke to a Zoom assembly of high school civic students in 5 states. She read aloud part of the bill, then responded to their questions individually. "Why did you not sue the president?" one student asked. "Because I wasn't looking for a courtroom victory," Jasmine said. "I wanted the nation to learn something." "Suppose this bill doesn't pass," asked another. "Then the next one won't either. But it will be better because we had to go." What are you doing next? Listening more, talking less. Politics turned noisy because we stopped listening to people who speak softly. In her own district, the same thing was happening. Voter registration went through the roof. Small businesses put up "Ask Me About My Ballot Plan" stickers. Churches had open table forums where individuals, many of whom had never cast a ballot, questioned how to make their voices heard. And Jasmine continued walking right through it all. Grocery stores, barbershops, high school gyms. She shook hands, not for the cameras. When someone would ask her how she had done it, she'd laugh. "This isn't winning," she'd say. "This is maintenance." A professor in a corner of the University of Wisconsin's law school watched her live stream as a case study. He replayed the clip of her reading the executive order line by line, pausing for discussion. His students dissected it like a legal brief, each clause, each deliberate word. At the end of the class, one student raised her hand. She wasn't dramatic. She was just clear. "That's why it worked," the professor replied. "That's the power of understanding what you're up against and knowing your audiences and enemies. It's neighbors." Months afterward, when the bill acquired sponsors and hearings were being held, Jasmine stood outside her elementary school in Dallas, where she had grown up. It was career day. The children sat cross-legged on the cafeteria floor, wiggling with name tags and paper badges. A boy sitting in the first row asked, "Are you famous now?" Jasmine grinned, dropping to her haunches beside him. "No," she told him. "I just didn't let people lie in peace." The teacher chuckled softly. In handing out pocket constitutions to the students as he departed, Jasmine had slipped a handwritten note inside the cover. "This belongs to you. Read it loud. Keep it close." Patrice confronted her across the office late that evening. "So, what happens if the bill doesn't pass?" Jasmine sat back in her chair, eyes weary but keen. "Then we'll draft another one. And another. Until the ground is exhausted of shifting beneath us." She paused, then spoke softly. "I didn't arrive here to be a headline. I came to ensure the next woman doesn't have to live stream her defense just to remain in office." And so, the story went on. If you like this tale and want some more news, don't forget to tap that subscribe button and switch on notifications so you never miss un tales, un tibes, un sou, is you the doctor has in that toke. So to tale and want some more news, don't forget to tap that subscribe button and switch on notifications so you never miss an important moment. Let your thoughts be heard in the comments below.